Where's Jane?
Right here.
Wherever I go, there are these signs that say Jane for First Lady, not Bernie for President. So they're right. They know who will run the White House.
All right, does that sound like a candidate who's dropping out of the race? And does it sound like Jane Sanders is even going to entertain the thought? The wife of the Democratic presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders, with us now. Jane, very good to have you back. Thank you for coming.
Good to be here, Neil.
You've seen and heard all the pressure. Your husband wins big in Indiana, comes away essentially splitting the delegates. What do you make of that?
Yeah. It's par for the course. So, I mean, the superdelegates have, many of them have already committed to Secretary Clinton. We expected that, but he won, and he won big, as you said.
All right, but it does seem like a kick in the hiney, right, to have to split the delegates. This is similar to what happened in New Hampshire, a couple of other states. New Hampshire won by over 20 points. You ended up splitting the delegates there because of superdelegates.
Yeah, in Vermont, he got 86% of the votes, so that says he gets 100% of the delegates anyway. A couple of the superdelegates are with her. But it's par for the course, Neil. I mean, those are the rules. They don't make a lot of sense, but we knew them going in, and that's just the way it is in party politics.
All right, now, you're chatting to me today from Kentucky, a primary in a couple of weeks for Democrats. That is one of those closed states. In other words, independents can't vote. That bothers you and your husband, that a base that you have largely galvanized and sent to near record numbers can't play.
Well, it's not so much that it bothers us. Yes, he would do better in the vote if all independents could vote. It seems counterproductive to either party. I mean, you would think that the parties wanted to grow. Bernie is bringing millions of people across the country into the Democratic Party, and yet the Democratic Party shuts the door on them and says, thanks, but no thanks. We want you in the general, but you can't play a role in choosing the primary candidate. So it seems kind of silly, counterproductive if they want to grow the party. And that's the number of independents. That's the largest growing contingent in this country. You know that, Neil.
Could I ask you about what you make of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, who has taken aim at your husband and comments about superdelegates, I guess by extension you, and that, you know, everyone knew the rules, you just said as much, and that now your husband's trying to essentially have it both ways. But I want to have you react specifically to her words.
Bernie Sanders is wrong because we have had these rules in place since 1984, and we have two types of delegates. We have the delegates that are pledged, that are elected by voters, or that represent voters based on the outcome, and then we have party leaders and other elected officials who have been in the trenches for a long time and who have a role, appropriately so, in choosing our party's nominee. Can I also just point out that there is some irony in him criticizing a process that now he says he wants to use to become the party's nominee.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think that as I said, it just seems kind of silly. We are saying we want, and you're talking mostly about the superdelegates. What I don't understand is how it makes sense that in the beginning of the process, in April of 2015, not this year, Secretary Clinton had, I think, 440 superdelegates already committed to her. That was before Bernie even decided to get into the race. That's kind of silly. When they set up the superdelegates at the first place in '84, they weren't allowed to weigh in until later. They were elected. I think they weren't allowed to weigh in until April of the year of the election. Now, if that had happened, maybe things would have been different. What I don't understand is how, and I think it's very favorable to any establishment candidate as we go forward. We're not fighting for us. We know the rules. We're accepting the rules for this one. But going forward, come on, that was one of the things that everybody kept on saying when they were considering running for the Democratic nomination. Everybody said, well, she already has it locked up. She's got 440 superdelegates already. That's 25% of what is needed to win the nomination.
But
so
nevertheless,
you
as
spot
you said,
somebody
and you're-
25%.
I'm sorry, but as you said and your husband has said, you can always win them over. They're not attached to that candidate, and I guess he hopes to do that. But
Right.
I was looking at the math, Jane, and I'm pretty good with numbers because I am the nerd here, as you know. And your husband would have to get well over 60% of the vote in all the remaining contests just to pull even or close, if you bear me out, among committed delegates, to say nothing of the superdelegates. So that gets the Clintonites who come back and say, then why are they doing this? They know that their path to victory is at best a narrow one. You say what?
Okay, 2 points. We do say it's a very narrow path to victory, but the fact is that he doesn't have to get 60% in every case. He has to get an average of about 60%. Well, California has almost 500 delegates. If he does better there, then he can do worse somewhere else. So it's possible. It's a narrow path. It's possible. Second, why is he doing this? Because millions of people around the country have supported Bernie. And a lot of independents who haven't been able to vote in the process are supporting Bernie, as is shown in all the head-to-head matches. He does much better against Trump than Secretary Clinton does. What he is running for is an agenda that can be carried out. He is running for president, but he's always said it's a two-prong approach. Start a political revolution, make people talk about the issues. He's been very successful in that during this campaign. Secretary Clinton has moved on the issues closer and closer and closer to Bernie. We are going to hold people's feet to the fire and allow every person in every state, there's 9 more states to go, have the option to vote for their candidate and vote for the agenda that they want to happen.
Do you worry, though, that maybe without intending to do so, Debbie Wasserman Schultz tipped her bias, that she is not some sort of distant observer of this race? Her candidate is Hillary Clinton. Her candidate is not your husband.
I know you want to start a fight in the Democratic Party, but I'm not going to play, Neil. So
I would never do that.
No, never.
Okay.
You know, we know, yeah. We know that there are differences within the Democratic Party. There's progressives, there's moderates, there's conservatives, and we intend to bring them all together under a Bernie Sanders nomination.
She's supposed to be an objective observer.
She is the leader, and Tulsi Gabbard was a vice chair, and she left the DNC because she wanted to clearly be open about supporting Bernie, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're talking about the Hawaii Democratic Congresswoman. If we could step back from this, Hillary Clinton tweeted today, there's only one candidate left who could stop a Trump presidency. Chip in now if you've got Hillary's back. In other words, using it as a fundraising vehicle and to rally around. If you ever got evidence, or your husband ever got evidence, that you're staying in this race is seriously damaging her and her electability, would you urge your husband to drop out?
You know what? All the evidence is to the contrary, and I guess I would ask her if her staying in the race is seriously damaging his credibility. I mean, I think there is no nominee yet. When she ran against Barack Obama, she said, I will stay in the race until there is a nominee. There will not be a nominee until the convention, because neither of them will achieve the number of pledged delegates that they have to have in order to be the nominee. So he's staying in until the convention, and we'll see what happens. The fact is, Neil, you know, anything can happen in politics, and in this year, my gosh, I mean, anything has happened. So we'll see what happens. We will run an issue-oriented campaign, as he always has. He's not questioning her character or her integrity. He's not digging up dirt, doing a lot of opposition research on her. The Republicans have plenty of that. We don't play that game. That's one of the things that makes Bernie a different kind of politician. Hopefully, she won't play that game either.
If she is indicted, remote as it might be, and your candidate, your husband, is the last one standing, he would presumably be the nominee. Is that partly why he stays in the race?
No, he stays in the race for the reasons that I said. I mean, I think that it is extremely important that his message, the message that says 20% of our kids are living in poverty, that's not okay. People are living in poverty working 40 hours a week at a $7.25 federal minimum wage. That's not okay. We need to raise it to $15 an hour. We can't be turning away all of our young people in terms of higher education, either bankrupting their future or foreclosing their potential because they can't afford to go to higher education.
Jane Sanders, I didn't mean
So
to jump
those are
on
the
you there.
reasons. It's always the issues.
You argue your points quite well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil.
We'll see what happens.
Thanks.
Jane Sanders.